Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. This episode is a previous recording of our live Ask a Professional Scrum Trainer series, where a live audience asks questions of professional Scrum trainers. We hope you enjoy this episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to today's Scrum Pulse webinar. I'm Lindsay Felicina. I am going to be your moderator today. So welcome. And today I have Lavaneesh Gautam with us. He is one of our professional Scrum trainers based in the UK, and he is going to be answering all of your burning questions about Scrum. So any questions that you have, please start entering them into the Q&A, and we will answer as many of those as we can today. And really quick about Scrum.org, we are the home of Scrum. We were founded by Ken Schwaber in 2009, and our mission is to help people and teams solve complex problems. And we do so through our professional Scrum training, certification, and lots of ongoing learning opportunities, including many free opportunities like this webinar and the learning paths on our website, and lots of free resources. So please feel free to check those out. And I hope that today's session plays an important part on your learning journey. So with that, I will hand it over to Lavaneesh to introduce himself.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, guys. So welcome to Ask a PST. So my name is Lavaneesh. As you can see, I am a professional Scrum trainer with the Scrum.org for the past 3 years. And I live in UK, born and brought up in India. And in terms of the experience, I have got quite a lot of experience, especially in the banking and also automotive and the industrial industry. But also at the same time, I have worked with quite a lot of startups as well, something I really love to do. So I do both the training, coaching, and all the consulting work as well. So I think I'm ready for some burning questions that you guys have got. So
Right.
let's see.
Okay, so everyone can start entering your questions. So here we go. Here's a question that just came in. What is the best practice to use when management still needs to do a yearly performance review for members of the Scrum team? Would retrospective boards be a good plan? What ideas do you have around that, Lavaneesh?
That's a really good question, actually. What's the best practice to use when management still needs to do yearly performance reviews for the members of the Scrum team? Yeah. So I would say there could be some good and bad practices, obviously, around it, but it's pretty much depend upon what level of organization we have got and what is the maturity of our organization as well. So I give you one example. So I have worked in certain organization where our annual objectives or performance reviews, they were pretty much the individual performance based. Okay, so you are writing your objectives driven from your line managers. You are just making a little bit changes to it. And then even when you are filling those annual objectives, it makes no sense. And then we are judged based on what thing that we are filling out. Uh, but in one place where I saw this thing happening, sometimes as a Scrum Master, we have to act as a change agent as well. And that's the moment when I worked with the HR and other line manager, and we moved those annual objectives, not just the individual performances, but also from the team's performances as well. And we were measuring those team performances and those individual performances every quarterly, because we work in a complex environment. Things changes very frequently. So I think you are right, we need to be agile in our annual performance review as well. But it's a big cultural change, and I would say as a Scrum Master, we should show low tolerance for impediments like that.
That's some great advice there. Thank you. Right. And if there are any follow-on questions from that, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A as well. All right. So this question here So, how do you deal with a situation when the Scrum team, developers in particular, complain that PBI refinement for upcoming sprints is impacting on their productivity and ability to deliver in the current sprint?
Ooh, again, very good question as well. Means, what's the aim here? Keeping the people busy or delivering the value? And I think refinement plays a huge importance in um, especially the bringing the focus back on the value aspect as well. For me, refinement is an activity where we break the big items into the smaller items, but and also we understand the value, the size, and also the detail behind those product backlog item as well. If we are not doing that refinement, I think we will be entering into the sprint planning with the garbage. And again, it may end up into garbage in, garbage out. You are entering into the sprint planning with the garbage, and very highly likely we are getting the garbage at the end of the sprint as well. So, choice is ours. Do we want the value or do we want the busy people? I think I would go with the value.
Definitely. Okay. All right. Thank you for that question. All right. So, this one here from Zach. How would you recommend handling waterfall project related work that needs to be assigned to a development team using Scrum? Examples of this work would be go live support, project related development work needing to be done by a deadline, etc.
Yeah, really good question. Again, so when we're talking about project, I think here we need to see that the project and the products, they have got very different kind of mindset as well. Projects, yes, on time, on budget, on scope delivery, awesome project. But I think that on time, on budget, on scope delivery and meeting those deadline can still deliver crappy products as well. And that's where I think the focus on the value comes in. And how to handle this thing. So even I know that in certain places they sometimes we have got those deadlines, especially let's say if you're working in a regulatory environment. I have worked in the banks. I have worked in those regulatory requirements as well, where we have to meet the deadline, otherwise you will get fined. And more importantly, it can be the huge reputational damage. And I think in those terms still, that's something that we need to do, is that inspect and adapt, which is I would say the core to the scrum, is really really important. And I think in those kind of environment, the scrum can fit really really well. We all have worked on 2 days task which turned into 3 days and the 4 days. Okay, we work in a complex environment, things changes, shit happens, those things happens. So again, we have to be able to adapt our plan. So if we have got our deadline fixed, then only thing that we can probably play with is probably the scope then. Okay, so even in if you so I have worked in one of the regulatory environment, and what we did was, yes, we had a deadline, but we learned that what are the most essential thing within that regulation that we have to meet. Not everything has to be met in that regulation as well. So the thing that we kept flexible in that was the scope. We cannot have all in the complex environment, and that's something that we need to see. If we try to see on time, on budget, on scope delivery, then only thing that we are compromising is the quality, which I think we shouldn't.
Right. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So, this question here. So, keep these questions coming, audience. They are all across the board. So, we're going to be jumping all over the place a little bit. So, this question from Anne, she asks, can we change the team structure for one sprint during a longer project with more sprints? For example, take out a backend developer because of a little workload for our backend. Who is responsible for this decision?
Ooh. Means I like the question. Can we change? I would say yes, we can. Yeah, nothing stops us, isn't it? Nothing stops us in making those changes. The team structure. I think what comes next is what is the impact of that change. Okay, so are we just doing the workload management, or are we doing the value based product backlog management? I think that's a really important thing. Okay, if the backend person hasn't got a little workload, my first obvious choice would be, can they go and help other people? And this is where I think that mindset of keeping the people busy comes in, rather than thinking about the value in itself. I have been a business analyst a lot of in majority of my life. But when I was working as a business analyst, sometimes I have done testing as well whenever I had the workload, less workload. So the first thing is, can I help someone within the team? And this is what we need to see is the team goals over the individual's goals. Rather than keeping the people busy, deliver the value. Second part of this question was the who should take that decision. Again, people who do the work. Scrum talks about the self management, and the self management means is the people make their own decisions. This is, I think, the team based decision, which is something should be taken by the team. Maybe if the developers they cannot take the decision by themselves, maybe scrum master and the product owner they can help in that. But I think the ultimate decision should be with the team rather than anyone else.
That's great. Thank you. Right. So this question is more of an idea proposal, I think. We might need to get some more context, but maybe not. Maybe you've seen something like this before. So, Lavaneesh, what do you think of using or implementing an agile maturity scorecard to measure a Scrum team's adherence to agile practices?
Ooh.
What types of
So
things have you seen maybe like this before?
mm, I have seen certain models, certain agile maturity models. There are quite a lot of out there. And the one thing my experience has been, there is no one size fit all, to be
Right.
honest. Okay. Every team is different, every product is different, and if you are working on the projects delivering certain products as well, that context matters a lot. And that's my biggest challenge, especially with these silver bullets, which people say that, okay, use our scorecard and you will be awesome. I don't think that works in all the context. Maybe it could be a good starter. I'm not saying they are bad. I think there could be the good starter, but I think we also need to see which part of those scorecard and all actually work in my context as well. Okay, and this thing is really really important and the essential part. Scrum is all about inspect and adapt, and we should be courageous, one of the Scrum value, in making those changes as well.
That's great. Thank you. And if there's any follow-up on that one, please feel free to drop that back in the Q&A. Okay, so this question, does the daily Scrum eventually eliminate the need of other meetings that a Scrum team maybe had prior to using Scrum that they used to do on a daily basis?
Hmm. Really good question again. So does it replaces the other meetings? I don't know what other meetings actually we're talking about as well.
Right.
Uh, and hence, what we need to see it. What is the purpose of the daily Scrum? The purpose of the daily Scrum is that we are inspecting our progress towards our sprint goal, which is reflected into the sprint backlog. We look back into the sprint backlog, and then we create our plan for the next 24 hours, again to meet our purpose of the sprint, which is the sprint goal. That's pretty much what the daily Scrum is. I would say it's a mini collaborative planning session for the developers. Yeah. If you are having some meetings, maybe the pre-scrum, which are fulfilling the similar kind of objectives and the purpose, then yes, those can be replaced by the daily scrum. Yeah. Uh, but if the purpose of those other meetings is very different than this, I'm not pretty much sure that whether we can remove it or not. I need a little more context behind what those other meetings are doing actually.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So next question here. I'm going to see if I can. It's a longer question, but I think it's an important question, and I want to see if I can. I'm going to share this question with everyone in the chat so everyone could see it as well. So this question comes from Kathleen. So she needs some ideas for how to implement Scrum with a technical support team. About half their work is technical project work, but the other is based on incoming work requests from customers and internal stakeholders. How do I manage this in sprints? Just use the sprints for project work and assume the capacity is really half of their time, since the other half is essentially support cases? Like, how do you make that balance? What have you seen on teams with this type of thing?
Awesome. So I can share my experience on that, and I had two different kind of experiences in it. So when we're talking about that technical support team that is doing a bit of the BAU kind of work, business as usual kind of work, but and also the feature work as well. In one of the instances which I had in one of the financial services institution, what we identified was that there are a couple of people who would be looking after that BAU kind of work, and then rest of the team will be focusing on the feature development. So that little restructuring of the team helped us in providing the better focus, and that better focus actually resulted in into the better productivity and the better quality. So that was one solution we I have seen. The another solution is very much similar to what you have suggested, Kathleen, is around checking. Okay, Scrum is all about the collecting the data. So in those cases, what we did was we looked into our past few sprints, that how much generally our time is going in working on this technical project work. Okay, some tickets are keep coming, some P1 requests and the P2 requests. That on an average, how much of our capacity going in there, and then based on that evidence, we were only planning for the work which was remaining. Okay, if we have been lucky and if we haven't got any incidents coming, any technical work coming, we all have got so much of backlog filled with work, we can always pull it in. So one suggestion I could always say is create a sprint goal. Okay, identify few sprint backlog items, and then if one or two sprint backlog items are completed and you still have got some time left, some capacity left, maybe you can always pull in. So Scrum with Kanban, that would be my suggestion.
It's great. And kind of tying in with this question, there was a question that came in about reducing work in progress. So what techniques can be used to reduce work in progress for the Scrum team during a sprint?
So we want to reduce the work in progress, isn't it? Is that the question?
Yes. What
Okay.
techniques can be used to do so?
So the first is obviously use the work in progress limits, and if you are using it in a, I would say, reducing the work in progress limit should not be the aim. Increasing the flow should be the aim. Okay. Reducing too much of work in progress limit sometimes I have seen has not been helpful for certain teams as well. So what we need to learn is what is the right work in progress limits for us, and that's something what we need is inspect and adapt again. Okay, so if you see that during the sprint there has been certain situations where we didn't follow our work in progress limits, we broke it sometime, then maybe that's a sign that maybe our work in progress limits are not right. Or another could be that we had our work in progress limit set up, but majority of the time the work that we had is always under that work in progress limit. That's another sign that maybe our work in progress limit should be reduced as well. So these are the few signs that we need to read, that we need to see to adapt our workflow and the workflow policies. So work in progress limit is part of our workflow policies, and I think we should regularly inspect and adapt. As team learn more, WIP limits changes as well. Reducing WIP limit, yes, it is an aim, but keep reducing it probably can end up into a different problem as well. So every environment is different. I would say find out the right WIP limit, and for that we need to inspect and adapt. Retrospective, make it WIP limit a part of retrospective.
There you go. That's great advice. All right. So, this next question here, how do you best deal with teams who are over committing nearly every sprint? How can we best help as a scrum master?
So I assume when we saying overcommitting, they are selecting 5 items but delivering the 3 items. That's what I'm assuming.
Yes, that's what it
Uh,
sounds like, something along those lines. And please
uh,
clarify if that's incorrect in the chat.
uh, 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 mm, I believe this is how it would be. Maybe, but if it is, then the thing is this is what again the retrospectives are for. Retrospectives are not just for okay what did go well, what didn't go well. These are the data that you have got in front of you. Guys, we selected 5 items but we only delivered 3. Is this the right throughput that we have got? And if we have got, then in the next sprint planning select only 3 items. Again, we work in a complex environment. 4 days task can turn into 5 days task very easily. Okay, when you are planning the work, you sometimes cannot see there's so many dependencies that we got, so many blockers that we got. Sometimes we can open a can of worms as well. Those unforeseen will only get unearthed when we actually start working on it. And this is the thing that we need to discuss into our retrospective. Guys, what happened with our estimation? Is it something because of certain underlying reasons that we don't understand it? Okay, or maybe we can take this opportunity to get better at our estimations as well, because this is what I have done in my journey as a scrum master, especially in the early sprints of any product. I always look into that. Okay guys, how much we have done, okay, how much we planned for, how much we delivered, and then based on this empirical data, then we are built setting up learning about our capacity in the next sprint, which again changes up and down, which always keep on changing. And I think is probably what we are looking for here is the predictability. And we should use the data for the predictability rather than finger in the air. I can do 3, I can do 5. I think if the data suggests team can only do 3, okay, go with the 3.
Awesome. Thank you. And if you need clarification on that, to the person who asked that, please let us know. So this next question, I am going to paste it into the chat so everybody sees it because it is a bit lengthy. But I think you could provide some good advice here, Lavaneesh. So in traditional waterfall development, one of the byproducts is that you typically have documents that capture all the business rules in one place. This is not the case in Scrum, where the business rules are scattered throughout various user stories, and it is difficult to understand the complete picture of the application's business rules. How do you handle this? So if you want to maybe share some insights here, and I'm sure you have some good tips to share regarding the definition of done here as well.
Yeah, means again, when we're talking about these business rules, I believe these business rules could be yes, those sometimes we have to document those business rules, especially for the audit. Yeah, I have again, I would give the example of working in the banking industry where because we are heavily into the regulated, so we have to adhere to certain business rules, we have to capture those business rules as well, and the documentation is a big part of the work that generally we do. But rather than again making the documentation as a one time activity, we were doing documentation as an ongoing process in itself. And that's where we, Lindsay, as you already suggested, that we made it as a part of our definition of done. So if we are building any features, if we are building any solutions, related documentation, if it is required regarding the business rules and all, and especially sometimes the standard operating procedures, things like that, we will be building at the same time when we have built that features in itself. Okay. By this way, the good thing that happened was, because our we have just built it, our information is fresh, and
Right.
we are able to write the things better. Whereas if I try to write the same business rule 3 months down the line, I have to put so much of effort to just remember what actually we did. And that's where we start losing some productivity as well and make mistakes.
Right.
So I would say iterative and incremental way of documentation helps.
Yes.
Documentation are for the features.
Right.
Uh,
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so this next question: how, as a Scrum Master, would you handle a situation where two talented senior developers don't agree on the estimation of a high priority user story?
okay, awesome. Get the data. Okay. So again, remember, in story pointing exercise is an complementary practices that many Scrum teams they do. It is not part of the Scrum. First of all, I would like to make it clear. Um, yes, because many teams they still do, because you want to have the predictability how much time it may take. But again, you call it 3, you call it 8. What matter is that why that person think it is 8 and why that person think it is 3. And the discussion that that we are having at that very moment is the crucial rather than that pointing in itself. If someone asks me, I don't care about the points. I do care about that discussion that is happening. When someone is saying that, okay, it is 8 because I have to do a lot of regression testing, and someone says 3, oh, come on. We already have got some automation test scripts already written for that. Okay. And that's a conversation that we need to have, because that's where we are sharing the information. We are calling out our assumptions and we are creating our solutions together. So if you are using this planning poker, story pointing kind of exercises, focus more on the discussion rather than the points in itself. Okay, points don't matter, and they are also not the measure of the value. Yep. Whatever it is, you will know in a month's time or the 2 weeks time, whatever it is. But then use that evidence so that whenever the similar kind of work coming in the future, you know how much story point you need to give. But I would not spend too much of time in just keep bickering on whether it is 3 point or a 5 point. I will just put any and then see, okay, how big it could be.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. All right. So we have two questions here from two different people that are the same. So, how do you handle if, well, the first question actually, so can the daily scrum go beyond the 15-minute time box? And how do you handle it if it does? Do you finish at the time box no matter what, or do you stay a few minutes longer?
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Okay. Uh, Again, I have got very practical and the pragmatic approach on this. No, to be honest, I would not just say if Scrum guys say so, we have to finish it in the 15 minutes. Yeah. The thing is that majority, and again my experience, majority of the places where the daily Scrum lasts more than 15 minutes is the place when generally we're doing that round robin individual status updates. That has been my experience. In maybe couple of cases, people are doing the really good daily Scrum. I hardly have seen it is crossing the 15 minutes. So if it is crossing the 15 minutes, what we need to see is that what kind of discussion are we having there. So few options that is causing that 15-minute is, yes, you are providing the individual status update. to the Scrum Master where everybody is saying, oh yeah, yesterday I worked on the Jira ticket 56984. Today I'm going to work on the Jira ticket 76984. No impediments. Thank you. And that keep on going where nobody is listening to each other. You are just providing the status update. So that's not the purpose of the daily Scrum, guys. Remember, it's a planning. It's a collaborative planning for the developers. So my suggestion on that would be, okay, think about the most important product backlog item. What's happening on this? Okay, what's the plan for the collective developers look like? Somebody is maybe doing a bit of analysis, somebody may be doing a bit of coding, somebody may be writing the test cases. Once you have understood your plan for the most important item, then come on to the next, then come on to the next, then come on to the next. By this way, you are focusing on the work rather than the individual. And you will see that the collaboration and the quality of discussion that is happening in those 15 minutes is going to be quite high. And that's what we are looking for, collaboration, and the clarity and the transparency. Not the status update. If it is crossing the 15 minutes, very highly likely it is turned into the status update. And maybe if you say whether it can cross, yes, it can cross, but I don't see that's a reason. Generally, there are some other reasons. Maybe we are not doing the daily Scrum the way it should be.
Right. And I'm actually going to drop a video in for the audience on this very topic. Daily Scrum is not a status meeting. Okay, so we're going to switch gears to a different Scrum event. We're going to talk about the retrospective, but this person is asking a question about a management retrospective. So it sounds like she's involving management or he or she is involving management in their retro. So just wondering if you have some ideas on facilitating a management retrospective. What sort of questions are applicable to drive a positive output and give a sense of safety? I will be facilitating a chapter lead retro in 2 weeks. Need some help as I have never done this before. Anything that you could share for facilitating a retrospective?
Oh, I don't know what this management retrospective is, but I believe based on after listening to you, Lindsay, that it may look like there are some line managers or the leadership, they are coming together and then we are doing a retrospective on that. They maybe it's not the Scrum team retrospective, but the leadership and the management, they are coming together and thinking about certain kind of continuous improvement. If it is happening, awesome. Because learning should not be just limited to the team, it should go beyond team as well, and the management, the leadership should learn as well. Continuous learning should be a habit. So just a certain facilitation technique, even if we are doing it in that as well, especially at the management level, people's sometimes they have got conflicting goals. Okay, and I think that's something that we should address as well. Have we got certain conflicting goals or not? And if we are looking for certain kind of facilitation tips and all, I would definitely suggest use this technique, the one of the liberating structures called 1-2-4 all. Managers, they loves to talk, some of them at least, and in sometimes in those kind of management talks, the quieter voices, they are not heard. And we need to be quite inclusive in especially in this kind of continuous improvement sessions for the management and the leadership. So use this 1-2-4 all. What you do is in 1-2-4 all, you provide first of all 1 minute everyone to just write down their opinion, suggestions, the challenges, whatever you want to focus on. And then you divide the people into the pairs where they explore more and more ideas, maybe discuss their ideas further as well, refine their ideas, challenges, what they got. Then these two peoples, they come together, they create a form of 4. And in this kind of facilitation technique, what happens is that you get ideas from everyone. It is very inclusive, it is very, and I would say very psychological safe environment as well. And sessions like this requires lots and lots of ideas. So 1-2-4 all, I would say. And also, please explore these liberating structures as well. You will find there are lots and lots of facilitation techniques that you can use as well. Probably I would add something like 15% solution on top of it as well. 15% solutions are that you identify at least one action which doesn't require anybody's approval, and I think it brings that make the continuous improvement a habit rather than a one-off activity. So 1 2 for all, along with something like the 15% solutions, these could be few liberating structures I can use to facilitate a retrospective which involves management and the leadership as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I dropped a link with a whole bunch of different facilitation techniques for Sprint Retrospective, some of them that Lavaneesh already mentioned from liberating structures and some other ones as well. So feel free to check those out.
We
And
have got great learning material on the facilitation skills on the Scrum.org website, Lindsay.
yes,
Yeah.
so check those out, people.
Yeah.
So I did drop a link there. So this next question here. So someone is asking. So I have two client focused questions. The first one is I would like to ask what should be done when you had run 4 to 5 sprints and the client did not like the outcome and decided to revise the project.
Okay. So is this question? Okay, so I can see Harrison. I would like to
Harrison,
ask,
yes.
yeah, I would like to ask what should be done when you had 4 5 sprints and the client did not like the outcome and they decided to revise the project. Okay. It's, if they don't like it, it's okay, isn't it? At least we are getting some early feedback rather than spending our 10 15 sprints, and that's when we learn that okay, the client doesn't like the work that we have done, and this is where the Scrum is a risk mitigation opportunity. So my one suggestion on that would be, many a times we ask the client what they need instead of why they need, and this is really important. So in our PSU class we talk about this a lot. Consider customers and the client as an expert of problems, not as an expert of solutions. And when we when we treat them as an expert of solutions, sometimes these kind of problems started happening as well. Okay, I have been into many situations where we have delivered exactly what the customer asked for, and then when we have gone to them and they say, oh no, this is not what I asked for. Customers, even they don't know what they want, but they definitely know why they want it. So focus on the needs, focus on the problems, focus on the kind of outcomes are they looking for, and then maybe think about the solutions and the outputs that you can come up to deliver those outcomes. But again, no one knows the market, no one has seen the future. Scrum can help in reducing that risk by delivering some done increment every sprint, so that after one sprint you can learn what whether this is what my customers want with it, this is not my customers want, and if they don't want it, okay, that's the opportunity for us to get the feedback.
That makes sense. Thank you. Right. So this next question is a tricky question. And we may ask for more context from you, Anne, if you're willing to share. So when is the best time to talk to the client about exceeding the budget within a longer project, if that's clearly the case?
Ooh, so when is the best time to talk to the client about exceeding the budget within a longer project, if this is clearly the case? Thank you. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So my suggestion, instead of giving them a big surprise, I will be keep giving them little surprise in increments. Okay. So what how I do is I make sure that if I have got any long project, again, I can see that maybe we are chasing some kind of on time, on budget, on scope delivery in this kind of projects. I change my plans, roadmap, product backlog, and show this to my clients every sprint review because we know plan is going to change. And again, it sometimes it reflects on the budget, sometimes it reflects on the deadlines, sometimes it reflects on the cost in itself as well. So if any little change has happened, I talk about that in every sprint review. And if our stakeholders and if our client, if our sponsors, if they are okay with it, we continue, can go ahead. And if they feel that, come on, we have got just this much of budget, then only option that we have got is then maybe reduce either the scope or increase maybe the timeline or something like it. But my suggestion, talk about this in every sprint review rather than just making it a big surprise. We don't want big bang products. At the same time, we also don't want big bang risks and the surprises as well.
That's great advice. Thanks. I want to circle back on a question that we already asked, and it was the one around the management retrospective. I just wanted to provide some clarity. We did get some questions in the chat about that as well, since we weren't 100% sure of the context. And the context was about management coming together to find out how well they are doing with respect to agile management. That was what that was. So I think we did pretty well in terms of interpreting that.
Awesome. And again, I can give one more tip as well. You look for the EBM framework, PAL EBM, or maybe something like it. So there is an EBM guide again on the Scrum.org website. Those managers, those leaders, they should look into that thing. Maybe you can run a workshop on that EBM in itself. What is our current value is, what is our unrealized value is, what is our ability to innovate, and what is our time to market. I think that would be helpful.
That's great. Thank you. And I did just drop a link to some EBM resources as well. All right. So this question here, if the team does not do a sprint review, how do we deal with it? And what action should we take to accomplish this event in the team?
Ooh. If team does not do the sprint review, let's see what could happen, isn't it? Because sprint review is one of the best opportunity for us to get the feedback from the stakeholders. If we are not getting the feedback from the stakeholders, I think our risk of building something which stakeholders and the users and the customers don't want increases. And that's a risk. That's the big risk. Is team aware of this thing? Okay. Are they ready for that? Now, if they don't do the sprint review, sometimes, now again, I'll share my experience as well. It is because they consider that sprint review is just about the demo. Okay. And that becomes a big challenge because many of our stakeholders, they do not want to see the demo. They probably wants to talk about that how the product is going. Okay, what is the progress towards the product goal look like? What is the progress towards our timeline and maybe the budget look like? These are the really important questions to them. Okay, and this is something we need to discuss into our sprint review as well. A sprint review is not just looking back at what we have delivered, but it's also about looking into the future. Are we building the right thing? And that conversation, I think for that, team needs to have stakeholders and they need to have this kind of conversation very frequently. If you don't, then you are incorporating a risk of building something that nobody wants.
Right. Thank you. Right. So this question here. So what could be some advice for an agile team that is not a 100% Scrum team, but they're using limited scaled Scrum and a few elements from Kanban? The team needs to set priorities and optimize the way the stories are continuously entering in an active sprint.
Ooh. So, what could be the advice for an agile team that is not 100% a Scrum team? Use limited scaled Scrum. I don't know what the scaled Scrum means is. Um,
Right. I'm
uh,
not sure what that means either. If you want to
yeah,
clarify that.
yeah. I mean, means if we are using Scrum along with the elements of Kanban as well, then it's really, really good. Yeah. And in a way, the many Scrum team that you also use Kanban, what pretty much they do is in the planning, they set their goal that this is what our goal, this is what high level objective for the next 2 weeks or month or whatever your sprint cycle is. And then they focus on one item, the one work is done, and they keep pulling more and more work. And I think it's a very high level agility in that team in itself. I would love that kind of team where they have got that level of self management that the flow of the value is quite high. But I really need a little bit more context on this particular question, Lindsay.
Okay. So feel free to, yeah, so a couple people have asked, does limited scaled Scrum mean some nexus? So it would be good to get that clarification, Adrian, if you want to clarify. That would be helpful if you are still on. All right. So we can revisit that one if we get that clarification. So this question from Juliana, how do you manage scope creep and technical debt?
Right? Scope creep, and I think scope creep means when you're talking about is things got identified maybe later or the 3 days task turned into the 5 days task. I think this is what we're talking about, and I think it's inevitable. Scope creeps when we're talking about they are inevitable in the complex environment because we cannot identify everything upfront in itself. Thing emerges. Okay. So only thing that I can suggest is whenever this scope creep is happening, learn that thing so that you can plan the things a little bit better. Um, so especially what you have identified into the sprint planning, and once the sprint finishes, think about that where actually we could have learned from the data during your sprints. And this is where maybe the Scrum with Kanban can help. Okay, what has been our cycle time? Okay, average cycle time, what has been our throughput, and when we have got this kind of data we can understand our predictability a little bit better, and the challenges of those scope creeps maybe those could be minimized. Now not the second aspect of it is how to deal with the technical debt. I think that's another question, and I would say
Yes.
technical debt is first of all, guys, if you don't know what technical debt is the results when you are compromising the quality for the value or the speed. Okay? And it could happen because of lack of experience, or you are making a conscious choice that we want to go to the market faster, and hence we are ready to cut down the quality. Okay, there could be these two main reasons. Now, how to fix the technical debt, probably there could be again the strategies, and those strategies I always like to call it as how do you pay a mortgage. Okay, you keep paying your mortgage little by little every sprint. Oh, every month. So this is what we need to do. We need to create first of all a space in our sprints to keep fixing that technical debt. Okay. Now, second thing is how do you manage your financial situation is you stop taking more and more debt. And this is where I believe the definition of done comes in. So maybe improve your definition of done so that in the future you are not incorporating more and more technical debt. And this could be by adding certain quality criteria. So for an example, in one of the software product company where I used to work, we added automation testing as part of our definition of done, and it helped us in reduce if of not incorporating the more technical debt in the future, and that was really helpful. In another case where we already had some technical debt, we did two things again. First, we made that technical debt transparent. We added this into our product backlog. We were made it clarify this in our sprint reviews as well, and then we start spending certain percentage of our sprint. We used to leave it every Friday uh, to fix that technical data in itself. And I can say from the results suggested to us was that the one day that we were spending in a week, actually our team was much more faster in delivering the value. So technical debt can eat up your ability to deliver the value in the long run. So keep paying it little by little.
It's great. Thank you. All right. So Adrian got back to us regarding his scaling and Kanban situation. So I'm going to redrop this one back in the chat so that everyone can see the original question. And then we are going to dive back into this one to see if we can kind of dissect some advice here. So just to repeat, the original question was, hi, what could be advice for an agile team that is not 100% Scrum team using limited scaled Scrum and a few elements from Kanban? The team needs to set priorities and optimize the way the stories are continuously entering in an active sprint. And the follow-up here is, in fact, several teams are working in parallel with their own sprint backlogs and unique product backlog. The goal is to optimize the process to avoid an overburned team and complete as many new stories that are introduced in a current sprint.
So we are measuring the busyness of the people in that case, I believe. And I always say that you get what you measure. And if you're measuring the busy people, means more story point, you will get more story points then. And more story point doesn't equates to the more value. Okay. Now in this situation, I think this is where the problem is happening. We are not measuring the value metrics. We are measuring something arbitrary number of the story points in itself. Okay. Uh, I know in many organizations this is a big problem. And one thing can definitely help is, first, if all those seven teams, if those several teams, if they are working on the single product, I think you need to have one product backlog, but with the multiple sprint backlogs. And with that one product backlog, because it will be in the priority order, it will help the team to understanding that, okay, how it will work. Another thing that can be really helpful is that something's coming from Nexus framework is doing those cross team refinement sessions as well, so that everyone can understand what the dependencies that we have got, so that our cross functionality is a little bit better. We are more self managed as well. uh, but if we all teams they are working on one product, they should be having the one product backlog. uh, that could be really really helpful, and again move away from those metrics which only measure the busyness of the people. Those are not the value based. EBM can definitely help you in that case. That, okay, what is whether our user count is increasing or not, whether our customer satisfaction is increasing or not, whether our cycle time is reducing or not. These are, I would say, the fact based figure rather than story points, which are just to me is finger in the air, to be honest.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And thank you for clarifying that, Adrian, for us. Okay. So this last question reflects back on one of our first questions. So, question from the first question about performance reviews. My company is also trying to figure out reviews for individuals. How do you measure an individual's performance? They want to use efforts, but for me as a Scrum Master, I feel like this is not a good idea.
And this is not a good idea. You are absolutely right, Pauline. And this is where I believe you need to go out of the team and have a chat with the line manager of those peoples as well. Maybe it may require that you have to talk to the HR department or the people department that you have got in your organization. Uh, uh, Choice is ours. do we want heroes or do we want awesome team? In majority places, we want awesome team, and awesome teams are the places where everyone is helping each other. When we are focusing too much on the individual reviews and the individual performance, um, that may create some great heroes, but great heroes doesn't mean that you are always going to have the great teams. So hence we
Right.
so again, yes, we can have those individual reviews, but at the same time we also needs to have, I think, a little bit element of the team goals and the team reviews as well. Otherwise think how, if you are not rewarding the people in collaborating and helping each other out, why they will then? They will be looking after themselves rather than helping out each other.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's great advice there. So, all right, we are coming up on our time here. So, thank you so much for everyone who asked these great questions today. I am going to share my screen really quickly. Okay, so just some very quick closing slides here. Get my video back on. Okay, so some very quick closing slides here. So each accountability in Scrum has their own learning path. So we have some free learning paths on the Scrum.org website. Feel free to check those out. We also have a lot of other free learning resources like this webinar. We run these webinars a couple times a month. Ask PST is actually once a month per language. So we do run these in several languages as well as time permits. So please feel free to check those out. And thank you so much, Lavaneesh, for taking the time today. And stay connected, everybody, and Scrum on.
Thank you.